When I read Malcolm's autobiography, his mother was from Grenada in the West Indies. His father was African American from Georgia. And this man survived so much. I said, when he got out of jail, I got out of jail. When he cried, when he met Elijah Muhammad for the first time, I cried too. When he got shot, I cried like I knew the man. And if a book can do that to someone, you know a podcast can, because they can hear your voice.
In our fast-paced world, it's easy to get swept up in the currents that surround us. But we are the authors of our own life story, and we are infinitely capable of creating the change we want to see within us and beyond. Welcome to Shaping Freedom, a show where we explore and share practical ways to cultivate extraordinary life experiences. I'm your host, Lisane Basquiat. I'm a teacher, entrepreneur, and life strategist. After a career as a corporate executive, I embarked on my own path of entrepreneurship and focused on the human and spirit connection. I come from generations of trailblazing entrepreneurs, artists, healers, and champions of human dignity. Hi, friends. On today's episode, I continue to share the immensely powerful conversation that I recently had with activist, journalist, poet, writer, and human Kevin Powell. A man using his gifts and talents to explore ways of finding love and emotional health within an unwell society. In this part of the discussion, we talked about the role of accountability and responsibility when considering the impact that our work and our words have on the world. We talked emotional and mental well-being as the core of creating quality relationships and life experiences. We also contemplated the idea of freedom. What does it mean, really? And how what we do and say matters, especially on the public stage, and how it can shape society in a more loving way. It's time for us to open the door to the much-needed discussions about the power of love, the consequences of rejection, and the impact of violence upon our families and our communities. It's also time for us to re-examine what true wellness means in this community. I believe that part of the intention of this interview was to help someone find their way to love, respect, and introspection on what it means to be well, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Here is part 2 of my conversation with Kevin Powell.
Do you know Eve Ensler personally, who created the Vagina Monologues by any chance?
I know of it, but no, I don't know Eve.
She renamed herself V, and she's a dear friend as well, and someone that I personally hope that you have on your show one day, because I think you two would have
I'd love to.
Amazing conversation. She changed her name to V because she wrote a book, many books, but her book called The Apology. She recreated the trauma of her childhood and young adult life. She was a survivor of her father sexually assaulting her. And she ended up becoming a drug addict as a 20-something because of the trauma that she had experienced and the shame that she felt. You know, there's no Vagina Monologues without all the stuff that she went through. In her older years, 40s, 50s, she just turned 70 this year. She has said to me and others many times that, like you said, we can't just say what's wrong. We can't just say what we're against. We have to imagine, well, what is the world that we want to create?
That's right.
You know what I mean? And you know, and I know that that world needs to have a foundation. You know, whether you believe in God, Allah, whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, you could be agnostic, atheist. I would say it just needs to feel divine. You know, we don't have to force religion on anyone, but it needs to feel divine. What does divine or spiritual mean to me? Love, like love and kindness and service to others. And if you have something and you see someone doesn't have something, considering sharing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And our society is devoid of that. You know, every January I do a series of Dr. King speeches, and I'm not gonna lie to you. Lisane, when I was younger, I was like, Malcolm X is the person. Dr. King, no, he's corny. Why did I think that? Because I didn't know who he was. I didn't even read anything. I just assumed he just had a dream and that was it. When I began to really study him, especially the last 5 years of his life, I'm like, here's this person, hugely imperfect. No one's perfect. I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. But there was a line of integrity. And I'm like, why was he stuck on this love thing? And I thought to myself, if love really was being practiced all around the world, why is there so many mass shootings in America? Why
That's
is there
right.
so much unhoused homeless folks in this country that we don't even care about? We have veterans who come back who end up homeless. We don't care about them. Women are abused every single day. We don't care about them. We don't care about indigenous folks. We don't care about immigrant folks. We're just shipping them all over the place, as happening in these times in
Mm-hmm.
this country. And then God knows what's happening. We know what's happening around the world. And I'm like, love's got to be a part of it. Love's got to be a part of it because this world, this country that we live in, and this whole world is deeply traumatized. You and I both know we didn't have the word trauma when we were growing up. I don't maybe I don't remember it. We just would say, "Man, something's messed up."
Yeah, or listen, just get it together.
Yeah, suck it
Just
up.
get it together, suck it up. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Let me tell you, my mother and I never hugged, never kissed. There was never any I love yous. When I got to college as an 18-year-old, because of a financial aid package that was created during the civil rights movement for poor kids like me in Jersey to go to college, just like New York has HEOP, we had something called EOF in New Jersey. I went to school with Lisa Williamson, who your listeners will know as Sister Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
She's a couple years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time she tried to hug me goodbye, and I recoiled.
Wow.
And she said, "What's wrong with you?" And years later, I wrote an essay for The Guardian, and I said that, you know what? I had been so used to being physically assaulted, beaten, the victim of violence or violating other people. I didn't even know how to hug.
Wow.
I had no clue how to hug. And so I had to relearn all the stuff that I had been taught. I'm a big hugger now. When we finally meet, I'm like, hey, family, I didn't know how to say I love you. I didn't know how to forgive myself. I thought I was, I grew up thinking that I was ugly. I grew up thinking that I was stupid. Grew up thinking that I was going to live a long time. I grew up thinking that I was just doomed because of who I was. I was a big drinker years ago. I stopped drinking 20 years ago. I used to think that it was just folks could function. There were people who functioned with liquor or drugs and they were good. But I realize now there's a lot of folks who function as spiritually unwell and mentally unwell people. They got full-time jobs, careers, they're making money, the whole nine yards, but they're very unwell. The problem with our society is that we do not encourage wellness. In fact, we make jokes about it, we frown on it.
We judge people for it. We criticize them. We shame them for it.
When I first told folks I was vegan back in the 2000s, they said, "Oh, he eats carrot sticks and he eats air." And they were like, "Ha, ha, ha, ha." I'm like, but I'm trying to live.
Right. A quality life, because
Yeah.
that's the other thing. It's like this survival thing where it's not just live or die. I think we have to elevate beyond the story of surviving to a certain age. Let's live a quality life. A quality life. And that includes food, that includes your emotional and mental well-being. It does. It does.
It
That also
does.
includes being aware of where the landmines are in your own life and within your own emotional well-being and doing something about it. Let's not just talk about, well, in my family, we blah, blah, blah. Let's do something about it because someone has to if things are going to be any different. And if we don't, you're just literally rolling from one generation to the next, a generation of women, a generation of men who are disconnected from who they are and
Yeah.
who they were created to be. And
That's it.
someone has to take accountability.
I would not be married if I didn't have a partner, my wife, where from the very first conversation we talked about trauma and healing and therapy.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because I was married before, no disrespect to her or past partners, because people could say it about me. I've been a mess. I've been in messy relationships. As we say, as Black women say, you know this better than I do. We can do bad by ourselves.
That's right. Seriously. Actually, I'm not going to do bad by myself. And since I'm not going to do bad by myself, I am absolutely
No,
not today.
no,
I have in the past, not today. I'm not inviting anybody in to make it bad. There's no reason.
no, we don't need it. It's like, what is wrong with joy? What's wrong with happiness? Like, my thing now is like every day I got to make sure there's joy moments, there's happy moments. Slow down. Everything doesn't have to be fast. Everything has to be guided by these things we have.
And other people's deadlines.
Yeah, like just I can't function like that. And people like, what's wrong with you? I mean, it's just, I've been that person. And, we both are New Yorkers. And so we know how New York is an amplification of the whole country. The whole country's like this. The whole
That's
country's like
right.
on steroids. It's just like nonstop. Even when my wife and I go on vacation out of the country, if you go to certain places, like say the Bahamas, for example, you could tell all the Americans because they can't even get off their phone,
They're moving fast.
moving fast. I'm
Yeah.
like, you're on a beach. You're on a beach. Chill.
Look around.
Yeah. Appreciate what's here. I realized what Dr. King said is what I had to do with my life. A radical revolution of values. Those are his words, not my words. A radical revolution of values. He said it on April 4th, 1967, when he finally came out against the Vietnam War.
That's right.
And it's still the same problem today because every week there's mass shootings. Every week there's some hate crime, something happening between people. We live in a society where people don't know who they are. They don't like themselves. They hate people. They hate people who are different than them. We other people. We do destructive things. I mean, and I'm honest about it. When I speak out there, I'm like, yep, I drank, I smoked, I did all kinds of stuff. Then I decided that one day I didn't want to treat my body like a garbage can anymore. I just say it, I just, no, and I always say no judgment because I've done it. I did it. I understand. And I realized a lot of it was to numb the pain of the trauma that I was unable to speak about.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It was real for me. Yeah.
And the hate crimes that take place, we talk a lot about the hate crimes and people hop on social media to complain about and vent about the hate crimes that are taking place out there. And there are hate crimes that take place within our own communities, within each
Oh my
other.
God.
If you decide to become vegan and someone is like, what are you doing that for? Making fun of you. I got news for you, brother, sister. That's a hate crime.
That's
It's
a
not
hate
that
crime.
you'd get arrested for, but that's some hateful stuff, that we're doing to each other, where someone's aspiring to do something that's different from the norm and you're criticizing it or finding ways to trip them up. That is hateful. I won't call it a hate crime because not to take away from the very serious nature of a hate crime, but it's like those micro crimes, that hatred that we share with other people that degrades our relationship with each other. It degrades our ability to feel supported and encouraged in the things that we're doing during this lifetime. And I joy, love, happiness, let's have some laughter up in there. I
That's
think
right.
those are the things that will help us to think more clearly and will help us to be better positioned to enjoy the beach or whatever the thing is that's around us rather than
That's
trying
right.
to run away from it,
That's right.
you
You
know?
just said something that made me think about like, yeah, and I'm like putting people in boxes and putting a label on it and sealing the box, we should be able to be the totality of who we are, whoever we are, I think about that all the time. Like, what is true democracy, to use Still Pulse's term from the great reggae album? What does real freedom mean? Be able to be whoever you are, be who you are.
Exactly.
I'm working on a piece right now about Beyonce at the end of this year with her tour, with this concert film, and the thing I remember when my wife and I went to see her in Jersey in the summer, I was like, man, there's every kind of people here, like everyone, and people are free as heck.
That's
And I
right.
was like, it's deep. It's like, and so to your point earlier, you're doing it with your life work brilliantly, powerfully. We have to be intentional on what we want to see. We have to model what we want to see. Doesn't mean we're perfect. We doesn't mean I have shortcomings. Doesn't mean we don't have bad days and make mistakes. But I think we do. Some of us realize we've been called in a certain kind of way. Not that we're better than anyone or anything like that, but I'm here because I have a purpose, and my purpose is to make sure people can shine as brightly as possible. And that's what you're doing. That's what I'm trying my best to do. I thought it was just to be a writer and write some books and make some checks. But when I started going out on the lecture circuit, and I do it a lot around the country and overseas, and I realized, wait a minute, people are actually listening to what I'm saying. I got a responsibility here. It's profound. And I've had people say to me, Kev, I watched you on MTV, or I read the stuff you wrote about Tupac, or I read your most recent book, or I listened to your album. I mean, like, this is, or I listened to your podcast, or I've been to your wellness sessions, I've been to your retreats. We are literally helping to save lives. And honestly, and I've said this to the Shabazz sisters, Malcolm's daughters. I said, you understand, when I read Malcolm's autobiography, his mother was from Grenada in the West Indies. His father was African American from Georgia. And this man survived so much. I said, when he got out of jail, I got out of jail. When he cried, when he met Elijah Muhammad for the first time, I cried too. When he got shot, I cried like I knew the man. And if a book can do that to someone, oof, a podcast can, because they can hear your voice.
I think that's exactly it. That's what music does. That's what writing, that's what words do. That's what a podcast or whatever the thing is, however a person's expressing themselves, that is what it does. It heals, it reaches, it connects to people. One thing I was thinking, and this is like from 10 minutes ago in our conversation, you were talking about Dr. Martin Luther King um and what he said about the war and about needing to redefine our values. I think something else that's very important for us to remember and take note of about Dr. King is the fact that he was very clear about what he wanted. So that kind of bridges the gap to not just speaking
Hmm.
about what you don't want, right? He could have used that opportunity standing there talking to all those people, hundreds of thousands of people, to talk about how horrible things were. And instead, what he spoke about was the dream that he had so that he could create a vision for or share his vision
That's right.
for the world with other people. So sometimes when we're talking about what's happening, that's that powerful, like that's that power. That's where, you know, the God voice comes in, where
Yes.
instead of talking about,
Yes.
I don't want you to do blah, 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 flipping that around to what you actually do want. Let's not talk about what we don't want. Let's talk about, not to, make it overly corny, but, if you have a
No,
dream,
no, it's not
what is the
corny.
dream? Maybe the dream is, I have a dream where Black men and Black women and Puerto Rican men and Puerto Rican women and people of color and people of all colors, can come together and have powerful conversations and can tell the truth to
That's
each
right.
other so that we can heal and evolve and learn from it. Like, let's take that part of that, of what Dr. King shared during his lifetime and use that as a model for how we can get to the next step. What is your dream? And do that in our relationships with the people that we love, family
That's right.
members, spouses, whoever, the parents, whoever they are. Let's start talking about what we do want
That's right. That's
because
right.
we already know what we don't want,
Yeah.
you know?
And let's also talk about what we have. I mean, listen, I come from poverty. I come from financial misery. But what I did have, my mother had an imagination. She told me when I was 2 or 3 years old, you're going to go to college. This is a woman, as I said earlier, with an eighth grade education, who had never set foot on a college campus. We had no books in the house except for a Bible. We never had any books in the house. We didn't have any money for books. The only time books started coming to the house is when we started going to the library, and I took the books out with a library card.
Hmm.
But she imagined something for me.
That's right.
I'm going to be on her shoulders, and I'm going to see some things that she may be able to see in her own lifetime. And little does she know that her son would become a documentarian of the family, of our communities, of our people, of our culture, and honestly of this country and this world. Just because she planted the seed in me when I was 2 or 3 years old, you're going to be something. You know what I mean? She didn't know what, but you're going to be something. And so when I'm out there, when I'm writing and I'm speaking, I think about that. And it's got to be with love. It's got to be with love. It's got to be with love. You know, it has to be, because it's like hate doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
Violence doesn't work. Misery doesn't work. Trauma doesn't work. Being toxic doesn't work. Why can't we try love? And I mean, I'm talking about the whole world now.
That's right.
We don't have to be specific about what's happening in certain places. We know what we're talking about. Clearly, someone has not been trying love all over the world. And we got all this stuff happening all over the world. And it's like, you talked to me about the black man thing. It's just, I've got a film coming out in a couple of months about black manhood. It's really about all men, because I realized that all of us got a problem. We think that manhood has nothing to do with love. You know what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with being soft and being kind and being open and
Right.
being vulnerable, And I'm like, this is actually destructive to us. This is destructive to us. This is destructive to our spirits. This is destructive to our minds, and it's destructive to our bodies. We talk about hip hop turning 50. If you'd have told me, you know, back in the day, that when we got to our 40s and 50s, you would see black men in hip hop still beefing with each other in their 40s and 50s, as we see every day practically on social media. When I was growing up, you from Brooklyn, I'm from Jersey City. I've lived in Brooklyn a long time. Man, when I was younger, as a black man, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. Why am I thinking about this stuff in my 40s and 50s?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we as a society and a world are unwell, and violence dominates everything. Lack of safety dominates everything. You know what I mean? If we bring it back to Beyonce, people could say whatever they want about Beyonce. I know when I went to the football MetLife Stadium in Jersey with 70,000 people, those white folks and black folks and Asian folks and Latinx folks and indigenous folks and women of all backgrounds and queer folks, trans folks, working class folks, didn't matter what their identities were, for at least 3 hours, we felt safe.
Around. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was creating an alternative space like you're doing. Let me create the space that I want to see where people can feel safe.
Kevin.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I say something?
You can say whatever you want, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. And I'm not, I just need to say this to you. I hope you know what your name means to people like me, your last name, and just thank you. I've been following you for a long time, more than you know, because I was one of those black kids growing up, black and brown kids growing up, who didn't know that I could be somebody. And I meant what I said earlier when I said I was looking for examples. And so you see people and you see names and you hook onto it, And I know it's not easy, but your family has a gift, and you've changed more lives than y'all will ever know.
Thank you.
And so when I go out there and do the work that I do, it's on the shoulders of people like your family, because I have a responsibility to live up to that level of greatness. I just need to say that. Thank you.
I received that. Thank you very much.
Now we can tell jokes. Okay.
Yes, sir. This was the last half of my conversation with Kevin Powell, offering his perspective on the journey to manhood and on how we must demonstrate love and respect for all marginalized groups. The fact of the matter is that all of us, not just creatives, have a responsibility and accountability to contribute to societal wellness every day in every way that we can. Please find and listen to Grocery Shopping with My Mother. It's available wherever you find books and albums. Thank you also for listening to this episode of Shaping Freedom. I'm Lisane Basquiat. You can find more information about Kevin Powell in the show notes.